I was sitting alone in my rusted Corolla behind the gym, still wearing my cap and gown, chewing on a slice of cold pizza, when a sharp knock rattled my window. I turned, expecting a security guard. But there stood Principal Hargrove, the same man who'd crushed my college dreams just days before, holding a thick envelope in his hand. His voice was calm, but the words that followed shattered everything I thought I knew. I owe you an apology, and maybe a future. But what happened next will shock even those who thought they'd seen everything. But first, let's go back to the beginning. The air was thick with the syrupy scent of cheap vanilla cupcakes and fading helium, but out behind the gym, all I could smell was engine grease and asphalt warming under the early June sun. My cap, too large for my head, tilted forward every time I took a bite of the sad slice of Little Caesars balanced on my lap. The crust had gone hard, the cheese gummy, but I chewed anyway, because chewing meant I didn't have to look up, didn't have to see the echoes of celebration bouncing over the chain-link fence. I didn't belong there, not among the clusters of moms crying into their cameras or dads clapping their sons on the back with proud eyes and full hearts. I wasn't part of that world. I never had been. My diploma was just a printed sheet that said I'd survived. Not excelled, though I had, but survived. Third in my class. That's what the counselor said with a dry smile, like it was a footnote. Not quite valedictorian, but still remarkable. Especially for a foster kid. Especially for someone who bounced between houses the way normal kids bounce between friend groups. I'd thought maybe, just maybe, that would mean something. But when my name was called, it barely rose above the buzz of the crowd. Not even a polite clap. No one whooped. No poster with my name in bold glitter glue. And when I stepped off the stage, I walked straight through the crowd and out the side gate. No one followed. No one noticed. I didn't even hear from Carol. Her text the night before had been vague. Try to make it. Depends on traffic. That was Carol for you. Vague intentions, vaguer commitments. Her absence didn't sting so much as it confirmed what I already knew. I was alone. But loneliness, I could take. I'd built armor for that a long time ago. What I couldn't take, what festered in my gut like rot, was the betrayal from the one person who could have changed everything. Principal Hargrove. He had the power. Just a call, a signature, anything. I stood in his office with my acceptance letter in one hand, the financial aid rescindment in the other, and I asked, begged, him to help. He looked me in the eye, that cold administrative detachment on his face, and delivered his verdict like a judge in a courtroom. Final, unemotional, untouchable. Accept it like a man, he said. But what he really meant was, you're not worth the effort. And in that moment, something cracked. Not my pride. I'd long since buried that. But something deeper. Something sharper. The kind of anger that doesn't scream or break things. The kind that simmers. Quiet. Focused. Waiting. The heat inside the Corolla had turned suffocating. The kind of heat that doesn't just cling to your skin but wraps around your bones and squeezes. The windows were cracked, barely, but the air outside was just as stale, thick with the scent of tar, hot rubber, and the distant sweetness of overwatered landscaping. My gown stuck to the back of the seat. The pizza slice on my lap had begun to curl at the edges like a dead leaf, but I hadn't eaten since early morning, so I took another bite and chased it with warm orange soda from a bottle I found under the seat. Then I checked my email. Again. Still nothing. Just the same 3 messages, orientation details, a withdrawal of scholarship, and one cold, impersonal line from Hillside's financial office. Due to incomplete documentation, your aid has been rescinded. That single sentence had rewritten everything. 4 years of pushing harder than anyone else in my class. I wasn't just a student. I was my own advocate, tutor, parent, and ride home. I worked until 2 a.m., bussing tables at Jackson's Diner, then woke up at 6 to rewrite essays for teachers who barely remembered my name. I taught myself calculus in a library cubicle, while my classmates paid for private tutors or skipped studying altogether because they had backup plans. Parents who would pay, connections who would pull strings. I had none of that. All I had was the plan: get in, get a scholarship, get out. And now it was gone. Not because I failed, but because one man with a desk and a title decided I didn't matter. $14,000. That was the number stamped like a brand into my skull, a number so far beyond my reach it might as well have been a lottery ticket I'd dropped into the sewer. I glanced at my phone again, out of habit now, not hope, and it buzzed. Mia. She'd always been kind in a quiet way, sat next to me in chemistry, asked about my essays, remembered my birthday once. Now she was at Red Lobster, holding a shrimp skewer in one hand and a gift bag in the other, surrounded by kids with their lives stitched together like tailored suits. Her message blinked beneath the photo. "Wish you were here." I stared at it until the screen dimmed. The ache wasn't in my chest. It was deeper, lower, a hollowness behind my ribs, as if the air had been knocked out of me by something invisible but heavy. There wasn't a reply she needed, and I had none to give. I locked the screen. Then I sat there, silent, letting the car cocoon me in its heat, letting the weight settle. Until the knock on the window shattered everything. The knock startled me like a thunderclap in a dream. My body jolted, instincts firing, eyes snapping toward the driver's side window. For a second, I imagined campus security come to clear out the stragglers. Maybe someone complained about the kid sulking in the lot, still wearing a wrinkled gown like some ghost that hadn't been dismissed with the rest. But it wasn't a security guard. It was Principal Hargrove. He stood as he always did, shoulders squared, feet precisely aligned, arms behind his back like he was preparing to deliver a lecture to the flagpole. His face held no apology, no warmth, just that same granite stillness I'd come to resent. I didn't move. I wasn't sure I trusted my voice. I wasn't sure I trusted him. He gave a slight nod toward the window. I rolled it down slowly, each rotation of the crank feeling like an invitation to something I wasn't ready for. "Step out of the car, McConnell," he said. The command carried the same clipped tone he used in assemblies and detentions, and I hesitated, half expecting a reprimand or some drawn-out moral about self-pity. But then he reached into his blazer and drew out a thick manila envelope. "Because I owe you an apology," he said, quieter now. "And maybe a future." I stepped out, warily, the gravel crunching beneath my shoes. My hands twitched at my sides. My heart, numb just moments ago, was suddenly alive and thrashing against my ribs. He didn't hand me the envelope immediately. He looked me in the eye first, and for once, I saw something crack behind that stoic facade. Regret. Not the theatrical kind, but the real, ugly sort. The kind men feel when they realize too late they were wrong about someone they dismissed. "I lied," he said, his voice clipped, but not cold. I stared at him, unsure if I'd misheard. 2 weeks ago, Hillside's board reached out. They were reallocating endowment funds. I was asked for student recommendations, he said. "You should have been first on that list." He exhaled through his nose and looked off toward the gym building, like he couldn't bear to look at me anymore. "I didn't think you'd make it," he continued. "Not because of your grades, but because you didn't have the kind of safety net this place favors. You weren't the profile. I was wrong." Then he extended the envelope. "I called in a few favors, made your case. Hillside's offer has been reinstated, full ride. Housing, too." My fingers trembled as I took it, the envelope heavier than it looked. I tore it open, every breath shallow. Inside, on Hillside letterhead, were the words I thought I'd never see again. Congratulations. We are pleased to offer you full financial support for your academic journey. For the first time in weeks, the tightness in my chest loosened. Not completely, but enough to let in air. Enough to let in light. The envelope trembled in my hands as though it had its own pulse. I read the words once, then again. My brain understood them, but my heart lagged behind, cautious, like it was afraid to believe too soon. I stared at the seal, the signature, the official language that had the power to rearrange my entire existence. I don't remember crying, but I know my vision blurred. The lines of the page melted and shimmered, the ink smudging under the fog of my own disbelief. For so long, I'd armored myself against disappointment. It was a reflex, a form of survival. But standing there, in the heat and the silence, with the most improbable miracle in my hands, something shifted. A crack formed in the shell I'd worn for years, and light leaked through. Hargrove's voice cut through that light, steady but strangely human now. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know. Sometimes the system doesn't recognize greatness unless someone fights for it. You made me see that. He didn't wait for a reply. He turned, his footsteps measured, and disappeared around the corner of the gym. I stood in the gravel a while longer, watching the shadows stretch across the lot. For the first time, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen, not by the crowd, not by the school, but by the future I thought I'd lost. That night, I pulled into the Red Lobster parking lot like I belonged there. Inside, I found Mia and her friends around a corner booth, still in their gowns, faces flushed with laughter and soda refills. When she saw me, her eyes lit up, not out of pity, but out of genuine surprise. I didn't make a speech. I just told them. Simple, direct. I watched their expressions morph from confusion to awe. One of her friends, Zach, I think, actually stood up and clapped. Mia hugged me so tightly I thought my ribs might crack. With my last $40, I bought dessert for the table. Brownie sundaes, cheesecake slices, whatever they wanted. And I didn't care that it left my wallet empty. I felt full for the first time in years. 2 months later, I stood in a hillside dorm, unpacking books and taping photos to bare walls. And now I spend my afternoons talking to students who feel like I did, small, overlooked, cornered by the system. I walk them through applications, scholarship forms, late-night doubts. Because I remember what it felt like to eat alone in a parking lot, and I know the kind of fire that one unexpected envelope can ignite.